All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:35 p.m. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Work Session of Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Did anyone sign up to speak on any item listed on the work session agenda?
No one signed up to speak. Please proceed.
Thank you. All right, report on the City Council meeting decisions of May 29th, 2025. Is that just the report that we had at our spots? Okay, and then I thought there was an item about report on another meeting. Wasn't there an updated agenda? I don't have it on this sheet.
Yeah, the Planning and Development Committee liaison report from
Yes, yeah,
May 29th.
yeah, it's not on here, but yeah.
Does he have the old agenda?
Yeah, I must just have the old one. Do we have anything on that? April, are you
I'm sorry.
liaison?
No, I wasn't able to attend.
Oh,
Go ahead.
There were three, maybe four agenda items. The first one was a North Nursery Corridor Neighborhood Plan, and I'll be brief because that was a pretty long presentation. But the city's engaged with a neighborhood to develop a neighborhood-specific plan that looks at things like, they did a survey, they did public meetings, and it looked at things like, are you satisfied with, what are your issues with your neighborhood? Traffic, parking, parks, sidewalks, all those kinds of things. Quality of life issues for the neighborhood. And the neighborhood did have some, I guess, some stops and starts, but in the end, the neighborhood came together with some good leadership. They had some good feedback. A neighborhood improvement plan came out of that. I recall the questions from City Council were not to create any false expectations about, yes, you want all of these things, but it has to fit into the larger budget and expectations of what the City Council believes the whole might, how the budget might go for the whole city. So there were some issues about funding, and this was going to be the first of many neighborhood plans which Jocelyn's team will come up with. The next one is the Heritage District. There is a survey that you can take if you want to weigh in on what you'd like to see the Heritage District to look like. Is that pretty much it? Okay. Then they also did a presentation on housing focus areas. So the HUD federal department has the CDBG grants, community development grants, but there are also state grants which were called community development grants, something like that. So there was a presentation on how the city can take advantage of some of those state grants as well. And the city is going to have, like everything, the city needs to develop a plan, have community input on those kinds of grants which might be utilized, and then they have to be adopted by City Council in order to go apply for those grants. I got that one right? More or less, not really.
Yeah, more or less. I don't know that one as specifically, but it's just putting together a plan. I mean, you always need to have a plan before you go in
Apply.
and request the funding.
Yeah. Includes budgets and strategic goals and things like that. Then there was the carport regulations. As you all know, carport regulations have been coming to planning and zoning for recommendation with City Council to approve or deny. They get the final vote. So there was some lack of clarity the last time this went to planning and development, and so the city staff was asking the planning and development people what direction they wanted to go in with carport cases. So the city staff, Jocelyn's team, is going to go back and tighten up the actual ordinance for city, for carports, And then they will be flipped to the the Board of Adjustments for final decision. So they will come out of our agenda and move to Board of Adjustments, which is technically where they should be.
As a
Just
special
carports, not all variances, just the carports?
This was just a carport discussion. So as a special exception was what, how we'll
Yes.
process.
Yeah. So that was that. Did I miss, was there a fourth item? You had a staffing discussion. That wasn't really an item, though.
Yeah, it was a future in focus, but we didn't get to it. We ran out of time.
Okay. So, thanks for letting me do it.
Thank you.
I'm glad I took notes, because I had them on.
Great, thank you, yeah. All right, then next item is a review of public hearing items.
Mr. Chairman, we have one item for consent agenda approval. That's the P and Z minutes from the last meeting. The first item that's under consent agenda disapproval, item number 3, 2024-373-PL Fleming Villas Edition. This plat is now ready for conditional approval. It has to be voted as a conditional approval because it has 2 private streets, and private streets can only be approved by the city council. So I passed out a memo to you at your places. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but that one should be pulled and voted separately as for conditional approval. Items 4 and 5 are still for disapproval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions about any of the items on the consent agenda? No.
Okay, and the first individual item is 2025-58-ZC.
Alrighty. Good evening, Commissioners. Haley Riddick here with Planning. So like I was saying, the first case is 2025-58ZC. This is located at 861 Hope Lane. The current zoning is SP246, so that generalized site plan for single-family residential 6, and they're proposing to go to another generalized site plan for single residential 6 with a variance to the rear yard setback. After review, staff finding there's no unnecessary hardship, and in terms of public comments, there's been none in support or in opposition. This is the aerial, so this is where the property is located. The future land use was this traditional neighborhood, and this is the zoning. So there is currently a site plan for this and 5 other lots that are surrounding it. It was a variance to the lot size, so these lots are smaller than the traditional R6, but they still have the same R6 setbacks and all that kind of stuff. So this is the notification map of the property owners that were notified, and then this is the site plan. So as you can see, this is the bottom, it's right here. This is what they've already did in addition. The kind of yellow is the covered patio, and the purple is an enclosed storage room. Let me see. And then another thing to note is they did initially come in for a permit in October of 24, so last year. And then this year there was a violation for the building that was built without the permit. And then in February of this year is when they submitted the zoning application. So this is the subject property, east, so their neighbor across the street, their north subject property, so kind of looking to the right of the house, and then their south neighbor, which is to the left. And I'm open for any comments or questions.
Do we know when they built it?
I believe it wasn't existing in, I believe it was this year, early 2025.
Okay, and was it the homeowner who came for the permit, or person who was doing the construction?
I would have to confirm with the applicant, but I believe it was the homeowner.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so I mean, when the citation was issued in this year.
January.
In January. It was already completed,
Yes, it seemed like
but they had just finished?
I don't know if they just finished or not. I mean, it kind of seems like it. They initially, from what I understand from inspections, they came in, asked for questions, and I think they were told to talk with planning, and then I don't think that conversation happened, and then it got built, so. But again, I believe the applicants are here, so they should be able to clarify on those.
that's, my question was, what, did they give a reason why they didn't finish with the permit process, but we'll ask them in the meeting. Thank you.
So, what prompted the investigation?
I would have to go and see what they have in inspections. I don't, Ken, do you have any knowledge on it, or?
Wade may be able to jump in and find a little more than I can,
Don't
but
think-
it's, go
Yeah,
ahead.
the only thing I have is that there was a permit out there that's never been issued.
That's, I think that was, that caused there to be an investigation, so somebody went out and investigated, and that's how.
Because they had come in initially requested a permit?
So my understanding, according to what we received on October 2024, that's when they came to apply for a permit, correct? Then on January 21st of this year, a site investigation revealed the construction without the permit. Then there was a fine. Is there a fine issue or just a violation was issued? Is there a violation? Is it just a piece of paper, or is it a fine that they have to pay now for constructing this without a permit?
Typically, they would, the code enforcement department would go out. Now, again, how they found out about that, what caused that investigation, but typically it'd be like a stop work. If they're doing work without a permit, they find a violation, they're working without a permit, it's a kind of a stop work order notice, and obviously that didn't stop them.
Right, so they finished the work even after the violation was issued?
That I'm not sure. I don't know if it was already completed and then they got a violation, or we became aware of it, or it was almost being completed. I'm not sure on the actual like specifics of that. Again, maybe that's something the applicant can better.
And then what they did would have been completely fine if they would have requested the permit?
No, because they're in their rear yard setback, so, and also it kind of, they have the 25 build line, and then they have the rear setback here, and so they're wanting to move it from let's see, let me go back to do we have a variance table on this one? I
I
don't
think it's a 20 feet setback. isn't
Yeah,
it?
required 20 feet, sorry. Yeah, and they're proposing 7.5.
Thank you.
Based on the background here, it said that on January 21st of this year, a site investigation by the inspection department revealed that the construction had been completed without a permit, and a notice of violation was issued.
So they were done before
Yeah.
they got cited? So it wasn't like they continued working after they got the citation?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
No.
it was already done at that point? Okay.
The house behind, assuming they've built in compliance, their back of their house, the rear of their house is 20 feet from the property line? Because those houses are really tight together.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the,
And is there a second story to this storage unit, or is it all just a one-story?
I believe it's just one story. I think the house itself is also a single story. Yeah, and that's kind of what's a little bit particular about these kind of lots, these right here, is because they were requested with a variance, like when they were built, to be on smaller lots, make things a lot more smushed. So they built a house that's big enough to be on a normal R6 lot. That might not necessarily be an issue, but when you have the, smaller lot size and still have those 25, and 20 setbacks and all that stuff, it, makes things a little tighter, but.
What is that on the back of the house behind them?
This,
The white?
or-
Yeah.
this is their neighbor. I believe it's a patio cover. I mean, you can kind of see, I believe that's what these might be as well.
That wouldn't be affected by the setbacks?
It would be. They would be. And I believe what they've done, I'd have to go back to the thing, so I don't know if it's kind of flush like this, where it kind of connects to this eave or goes in, or if it's a little wider, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
I mean, it looks like several of those houses have something coming out the back that seems like it must be impinging on the 20-foot setback.
Yeah.
So Are there any pictures of what they did?
Not that I believe.
No, there were, we looked and the inspector didn't load any up.
So are all of those right there on that same street, also a back porch or cover patios without permit?
It could be. We would have to go and look. I mean, it's hard because some of these are, I guess it would be kind of without permit, at least that we know of. We didn't really dig into all the other surrounding properties on there.
And you can't really see those back areas from anywhere.
Yeah.
When you drive around that whole U, there's no real way to see in there.
But it seems to me if we know what's occurred on the other houses, I'd like to treat them all the same way.
Yeah.
It seems unfair to say yes to one and then not grandfather the others or no and have it affect everyone.
The house that is on the other side, Grace Lane, third one down, they pulled a permit and they did probably 400 square foot covered off Grace Lane. So that area over there, there is people that pulls permit and the city's been allowing.
Been
that.
approving them.
It's been approving them, yeah. There's a lot of covered patios, sheds, et cetera, because like their yards are sort of small. But the one that is on Grace, they just did it. Yeah. So,
Can kind of see.
Yeah. Several of them seem to have things there.
but it's very common over there.
Yeah.
And the setbacks, you can't necessarily comply with a lot of the setbacks, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So almost everybody over there has a shed of some sort or something in their backyard.
Some are better than others.
Yes, sir.
As happens.
But I know the city, like I said, he just built 400, probably 400 square feet over there and attached it to the house. It looks really nice.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I think when Terry Penn built these houses, Ski Life Homes, there wasn't that option for the back to add on, but he did lay them out where you could add them on very easily. You could add a gable roof to them.
I think we're done.
Alrighty.
This is one of the ones that they've requested postponement.
Yes, they are requesting additional postponement, this one, the next case. They're requesting additional postponement to July 7th. They still have not been able to have all the meetings that they want to have with the neighborhood, so they asked for the additional postponement. So-
Anybody who feels we need a presentation on these two, since they've requested postponement? I agree. Let's not, we've heard that presentation already.
Okay.
And if we're just postponing, then that's great.
Okay, moving on then. Item number 9 is zoning case 2025-111-ZC. This is for the Toyota Music Factory. The way a Toyota Music Factory is done is the entire site is a single SP1 RAB for restaurant and entertainment and office and all sorts of uses. So the whole thing is under an RAB. So in order to make any change, SP1 being detailed site plan, any sort of physical change to the area of a building that would change the parking or anything like that needs to be a new zoning case for the entire thing. So while this is just the purpose of the case is because they are increasing the size of a tenant space in building A2 Suite 100. So I'll show you that in a second. But because it's SP1 RAB for the entire music factory has to be rezoned. So this is a spot right here of the building expansion. Right now, it's kind of designated as an outside patio, much like these two spaces, the Alamo Draft House and the, I think, Yard House is the one over there. And then this is what they're planning to do. This elevation is not for approval, but it shows you what they're trying to do. Is basically, it's a full enclosure of the space. So it's not merely just extending the patio and having it open to and basically being a covered patio. This is a full enclosure. So because of that, it's expanding the building space, and that's necessitating it. There's enough parking on the site to handle the relatively small additional space that's being added. This is what it looks like right now, designed more to be kind of a covered patio. And as you can see, they'll be kind of taking those columns and bring them inside the restaurant at that point. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Staff, of course, is recommending approval.
Could you go back to the picture? Yeah.
And it's Gloria's, that's the next one over, and I think they have the same structure, same sort of structure, sort of enclosed patio. It's right over there. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was designed that way originally.
Yeah.
For that was designed to be part of that. That wasn't new. So this is new. It's a relatively small change, but it does require everything to be redone. And nice thing, if there is a silver lining to this, it's that all the changes that have been done to Music Factory that did not require a zoning change can be incorporated into the site plan now, so it's more accurately reflecting what's out there. So that's the silver lining.
Is that a new restaurant that's coming there, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is the Tajin. I'm good. I'll let the applicant say Tajin. Tashan. Okay. The applicant can tell you more about the restaurant at the public hearing. Any other questions on this one?
I get one question. I see that the recommendation is approval but subject to additional corrections. So is that still the case? If we want to approve, it would be subject to additional corrections?
You could do that, or just say a recommendation of approval. Either way is fine. We're working with the applicant. We're going back and forth. There's basically some. That's why it says not updated, because there's still. I should say not finalized, really not updated, because it's just basically some technical typos. Like, for example, these keynotes here need to be shown on the building over here. So what happened was the original architects that were working on this are no longer on the project. And so they're basically having to rebuild all the CAD files from scratch. So it's just taking them a little bit longer than they anticipated. So it's just getting all the notes properly in the right spot. There's no policy issues with it. Everything works out. It's just kind of the technical getting everything to match.
Thanks.
I think we're ready for the next one.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gina Costanza Grant with the Planning Department. The next case is 2025-132-ZC. It's located at 1900 Marketplace Boulevard in Suite 110. The applicant is requesting to rezone from SP1CC, Generalized Site Plan for Community Commercial, to an SP1 RAB, or a detailed site plan for a restaurant that allows the sale of alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption. The staff is recommending approval, and we did not receive any comments in support or opposition. This is the property in question. It's a suite within the existing building. This is the future land use map, surrounding zoning map, the property owner notification map, and this is the site plan they provided. The shaded area that's shown in the green circle is the area that they are requesting the RAB for. It's actually an Indian restaurant that's locating within an existing India Case and Carry grocery store that's there. They are also currently operating with a valid BYOB permit, but they do want to change that to a regular SP1 RAB that would allow people to purchase their alcohol on the premises and consume it there. If that is approved, their BYOB permit will become null and void, so that will go away. This is their illustrative floor plan that they provided for the restaurant. And this is looking at the building within the center. This is a close-up of the actual suite space. And this is the building to the south within the same center. This is looking northwest of the subject property, looking southeast, and looking southwest. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Do we know why City Council voted 6-3 in November against this?
We could direct you to the video. The council had some concerns about the restaurant being in with the rest of the retail, although that being said, we have restaurants that are in with grocery stores in other areas of the city too. But there was some concern about that, some concern about how that might affect the parking on certain days. They do meet the parking requirements.
So this would end up being something more like the old Granada Market or something like that, where you have a little restaurant
Yeah.
component and then also the retail.
Yeah, P&Z voted to recommend approval of this last time. But
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, yes, one. Is the concept of the store, because it looked like it was like, is it changing to a full restaurant? Or is the concept itself staying the same?
the restaurant, I believe, is there. They're approved for a BYOB, but they just want to switch it now to the RAB. But the restaurant is.
Inside this
it's
Indian
already
cash and
there.
carry?
It's already
Yeah, I
there. They're
think
just
it
BYOB right now.
Does have its own opening as well, but they're definitely connected.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And the applicant may be able to shed a little bit more light on that. Are we ready for the
Yeah.
next case,
Maybe
or
one
did
more
you have a
question.
question?
Just one more question, because I noticed Specs is like right next door to that. So are they selling alcohol from the restaurant, or are they selling alcohol for people to buy to go out, like Specs, which is next door?
I think the TABC permit that they are seeking would require them to have their alcohol on premises for sale on their
Assumption
premises.
on, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They are usually required to show a storage area where they keep the alcohol, and that would be part of their TABC requirement.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Okay. The next case is similar, an SP1 RAB. This one is case 2025-136-ZC, located at 3143 West Airport Freeway. In this particular case, the property is zoned SP2 for CC, or a generalized site plan for community commercial. And last year, this also granted a variance to the parking requirements. State Highway District 183 has a requirement to limit parking between the building and the highway, and they received a variance to permit 65% of their parking between the building and the highway, so they want to retain that with the addition of their RAB. The staff is recommending approval, and we did receive one comment letter in support and none in opposition. This is the property under consideration, and this is the future land use map, zoning map, property owner notifications, and this is the site plan. The red area that's shaded is the area that will contain the restaurant with the RAB. The space just to the east is, I believe, going to be a Smoothie King, so another restaurant-type use, but it will occupy most of the building. It was a little bit difficult to get pictures from the 183 access road, so this is actually from the side street. You can see kind of the side and the rear of the building there. And this is looking to the north of the property. I believe it's Imperial Drive is the side street. And again, this is looking west of the subject property. This is a Google Street Maps shot that we took to show the east portion of the property, because that area along the highway was fenced. And this is looking south of the subject property. And I'm happy to take any questions you have.
And this is the Argentina Bakery, right?
Correct. They apparently already have one in operation, and this
Yeah,
is
it's just
a new,
around the corner there, on the other side of Target.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't this the one that we,
We approved
We
it.
approved it,
Yeah,
yeah.
we approved that. She was talking about the parking.
Yeah.
Because they're having more of the parking in between them and the highway than would otherwise normally be
yeah.
the case because of
Yeah,
the
we
nature
knew,
of that
because there's
site.
some kind of utility
Yeah.
easement that runs through
I
it
think they
or
also
something.
had right-of-way taken when the expansion of the highway went through, so
Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah,
a
there's some kind
combination.
of utility easement or something that
Yes, and that
causes this
utility easement
property
that
to
cuts
set back,
across.
so got somewhat of a hardship on it.
Yeah, it made it very difficult to site the building.
Yeah, I don't think they have RAB where they're currently located, though, do they?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I know the applicant plans to be here.
And this is a substantially larger space than what they have right now. Yeah. Any questions? No? Great, thank you.
On item 12, this was one of the reasons for the amended agenda. After we advertised and noticed this case, we basically were conferring with the city attorney's office, and it was determined that the way the notice went out for it was for an attached accessory dwelling unit, and that would be more appropriate and technically correct to be a variance to a second kitchen with a within a single-family home. For that reason, we are asking that this case be postponed to allow for new notification. We talked to the property owner, and they're actually going to be out of town in July, so they requested that the postponement be to the August 4th agenda. So we would be doing new notification that would be for the second kitchen, and it'd be at a time that the applicant could be here, so.
So because the notice wasn't done correctly, we couldn't approve this even if we wanted to.
Correct, and we did tell the applicant because of that, that they didn't need to show
Yeah.
up tonight, and I think we
Okay.
put that in the memo, but,
But we still need to do a public hearing,
yes. Yeah.
and then, but then we'll make a motion
To
presumably to
po- yeah.
postpone until the
Correct.
the August 4th date. Okay.
Correct.
All right, great.
Okay, thank you. To August 4th, yeah.
On this one.
Forgot that one was postponed. I should have just stayed up here. All right, let's go to the next case is a special fence site plan 2025-138-SFP located at 6300 Longhorn Drive. The current zoning is SP2CO, or Generalized Site Plan for Commercial Office and Data Center Uses. The request is a variance from Chapter 15-10 regarding fence height within the front yard of the Land Development Code. And this is to allow an increase in the maximum height of a fence from 10 feet to 12 feet within a front yard area. The staff finding is that the request meets the criteria for approval. We did not receive any public comment forms in support or opposition. And this is the property under consideration outlined in red. The surrounding zoning map and the notification map. And this is the proposed site plan where in this particular area, where it's shown as the project area, there is a small substation being constructed that is designed to serve the adjacent data centers. And the applicant is looking to place a fence around that area for both visual screening and security. Because it falls within the front yard area, and in this case, that does not mean within the front setback. It just simply means between the property line and the building face, so that area being considered the front yard. We do not permit fences in excess of 10 feet. So that is the reason for their request for the variance to go to 12 feet. In addition, they have security reasons for wanting to keep that electrical substation secure. One other thing I did want to point out is Longhorn Drive, which is adjacent to this portion of the property, was, when the property was replatted, this right-of-way was actually vacated back to those property owners for the data center, and it is now a private street. So technically, it really isn't even a public street in this area for frontage purposes. This is a more detailed area of the substation and where the fencing will be located, this little dotted line around the perimeter. And this is photos that they provided that showing the design of the wall. For special fence project plan criteria, the section states that to grant a variance, it must be determined that all of the following findings are made, that the requested variance does not violate the intent of this chapter. The requested variance will not adversely affect surrounding properties, that it will not adversely affect public safety, and that special conditions exist which are unique to this applicant or property. Staff does believe that all those criteria for approval have been met. It is unique in that they do have a private street, they require this extra security, and that would be sufficient to justify the variance. This is the subject property, and this is looking directly at the area where the substation is being constructed. And this is looking just to the north of that parcel. This is looking to the south. And this is looking to the east across Longhorn Drive. There's additional data facilities over on that side of the road. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any
Oh, one
questions?
other thing I did want to mention, the applicant for this case has been stuck in an airport all day trying to get here. And he had at one point requested to postpone the case. You do have the purview to act on it, should you decide to, even though they are not present. I know that's typically not what the Planning Commission does, but their intent was to be here. They totally understand if you feel that you need or want to postpone it until someone can be here on their behalf.
Thank you.
He's been emailing Gina all day saying, I'm delayed again, I'm delayed again.
He was coming from New York, and it just kept getting bumped and bumped and bumped, and he would have arrived at 7:30, so.
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Oh,
One question, just so, and I don't have anything against this, but the reasoning of security, is it because, I mean, substations get broken into often, or is that?
I think part of it is you just want to make sure
The
people
power
don't-
supply
Yeah,
is
don't get.
safe.
You want to
and
make sure people don't get in there. It's a safety concern.
For the public?
Yeah.
Them
More
too,
than anything.
Yeah.
as well as their equipment, I'm sure.
Thank you.
any other questions? No? All right, great. On to item number 14.
Alrighty, this is for Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2025-142CP. This is located at 3131 North O'Connor Road. It's currently traditional neighborhood, and then they want to change the designation to compact neighborhood. After staff review, the recommendation is for denial. In terms of public comments, there's been none in support, but there have been 4 in opposition. There is also a companion case with this. Do you want to be, okay, perfect.
All together is great.
Awesome, all right. So this is the aerial. It's currently the Sloan School, which is a private school. And then once again, just confirming that's that traditional neighborhood zoning map. Property owners that were notified. And so for existing proposed future land use, regional commercial, I don't know why this says regional commercial, sorry. These were not updated, I'm so sorry, but it's from traditional neighborhood to compact neighborhood. So for in terms of criteria for change, for non-residential desires to transit to a primary residential use, require if it's physically appropriate, it's adjacent to residential neighborhood, or sorry,
But it's already traditional neighborhood, right?
yeah.
So would it be a different set of
It'd be,
categories?
sorry, I don't know if this was uploaded correctly. Because it is, the zoning district is SB2R 7.5, which is residential, but it's for a non-residential use because it's a school. So it is technically a non-residential use that's being converted to a residential use.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the subject property, north of the subject property, south of the subject property, and then east. So they kind of share, these two properties are kind of along the frontage of the subject property, sorry. And this is the zoning case, so that 2025-141ZC. They're going to go from the generalized site plan 7.5 residential to townhomes. After review, staff recommendation is still denial, and it was the same amount of public opposition for those 4 letters of opposition. Let's see. They weren't asking for any variances, so the site plan zoning wasn't required, but they did submit this initially. They're proposing to have about 23 townhomes, so they would come in from, oh, so sorry. Well, there we go, so sorry, y'all. So they'd come off of North O'Connor, turn in, the existing school is right here, so. And then the same questions, and that's all we got. So is there any comments or questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Reyes, do you have a question?
So, for my understanding, where the school goes like inwards, they're wanting to make like a street then, and then around it would be the townhomes?
Yeah, so they have a Right now, I believe it's like there's an entrance here, and then the school, and then there's like a driveway, and then the school's here. So they would demo the whole school and then just have one driveway, and then they would have obviously the turnaround. And initially they had this for visitor parking, but I believe looks like they're keeping it for open space.
Just a reminder, this is an illustrative plan.
Oh,
So
that's
you're
right.
not this is a straight zoning case. So it may look like this, they could actually take that and do 4 townhouses that lined up on O'Connor, in theory. And have really, really big backyards, or do anything in between. So I just want to be careful that you see us as illustrative.
And was this one of the zonings that were messed up, not messed up, but the tradition, since it's zoned as traditional neighborhood and it's a school, it's just one that was not fixed?
No, it's as of right now, it is compatible since it's surrounded by single family. So the traditional neighborhood fits that.
It does.
It wasn't one of those, I know you're talking about where we're talking about going and amending some of the future land use. Yeah, this isn't one of those
Okay.
properties.
Okay, thank you.
How tall would these be able to be? How many stories?
RTH allows 30 feet.
Okay, so you're talking 3-story townhomes with a residential right there?
To the peak or to the eave?
It depends if it's a flat roof or if it's a pitch. If it's a pitched roof, it'll be 30 feet to the midpoint, is the height between the midpoint of the eave and the top of peak of roof, if it's a pitched roof.
What's that? Okay. Yeah, what's the square footage on these lots, or what's likely to be? I know this is illustrative, but we're talking fairly small lot size, right?
They have to meet the minimum for RTH so it's 2460, I believe.
Okay.
2420, almost did from memory.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to make a comment about, I know this is illustrative. I'm familiar with this area. That road that's labeled Brockback Drive, that's actually an alley. If you go to the east, it becomes Brockback Drive. But I just point that out because it's illustrative how this is really sandwiched between 2 single-family housing neighborhoods. I think the school itself fits well with the area, and kind of to the south transitions to more of residential office, professional office type of spaces. But I share what I think is the concern of staff, that this probably isn't a good fit for the area.
And also this land right here, I believe it's the new Farron Elementary School. So
I guess I don't understand why, if it's going to compact neighborhood, there's so many other choices. You said cottage homes, courtyard homes, low-density multi-dwelling. Is that considered low-density multi-dwelling? Because that doesn't look low-density. I know it's illustrative, but why do we not encourage them to do something that's a little less dense like that, where it's so tightly squeezed into single-family homes on both sides?
They could. I think that this was just their first thought, was the townhouses. So the townhouses are attached single-family. This is kind of the official way to look at it. Yeah, they could do cottage homes. They could do what you referred to as the low-density multifamily. Could be a 3-plex, a 4, something like that. That would be the type of thing you would see in a compact neighborhood area. I think this was just their first thought, and if approved, might be their intention. I don't know that they've thought of anything else, but those others would be allowed in this district.
But we're not allowed to, that's illustrative. So if we agree that it could be compact neighborhood with something that is some of these other options, they could still end up building this if we change it to compact neighborhood. If we
And to
allow it.
townhome,
I mean,
yeah.
townhomes,
Yeah.
yeah, if we allow it.
Yeah, they could
Right.
still do a bunch of
I'm not-
3-story buildings right next to all the
I'll
single family.
just be very frank, I have some real concerns.
Is Farine one of the schools that they're building the school back, in the back part there? Okay. And then we had some concerns, we talked with them about making sure they weren't looking into people's yards, if I remember correctly. They sort of designed it with that in mind.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is the applicant the owner or the buyer?
I believe it's the owner of the Sloan School, which is currently existing. I'm not sure why they want to change it, but that's what they're currently wanting to do, is the townhomes, so.
Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Next item is discussion of possible amendments to Planning and Zoning Commission rules of procedure. So this is something we've been working on bit by bit. Just a reminder, we don't have any action items for this, so we can't vote on anything in this regard. But last time, staff provided us a presentation of, some of how our rules of procedure work, some of how that's different, similar from the council's. And then also, we wanted to have a chance to try and think of, are there any things that we wanted? So really, at this point, I wanted to see if anybody had any specific proposals they want to make right now. I don't anticipate this will be our last time to talk about this, but just if we have anything right now in order to be able for us to be looking at, for staff to be investigating and seeing if we can come up with something that then we'd be able to look at more at the next meeting or so.
I can go.
Various people with.
I'll go after you, go ahead.
So I had brought up last time, I thought it might be worth revisiting the ex parte communications rule. So I prepared, so I know we're not making a decision, so maybe this is something that can be considered to put on the agenda. I just typed something up just for a frame of reference. I don't know how many I have here, but if you want to pass it, I know at least one copy for you and you. So if you want to pass those two, and that's yours. Pass this around. So this, I'm not married to this. This is just for purposes of discussion and something to react to. But my understanding, the spirit of the rule is to comply with the Open Meetings Act and also to promote, the sharing information and any helpful discussions that folks have. I think my concern was just that the rule as written was a little overbroad in terms of the appearance of having a mandate of reporting every kind of discussion or where exactly that line might be drawn, and also a mandate for the city staff to pass along whatever information they have, which I think would be also hard to make distinctions or decide when that might be appropriate or not. So the language so the bold language is what I would intend to keep. The change is what I thought would be more in line with the spirit of the rule, which is just that we should be mindful of complying with the act, and that we're free to reach out to city staff for any questions, and staff may supplement case information with the information they receive. And I thought that would be helpful to us and provide some guidance. So that's the proposal for consideration at a future time.
Thank you. All right. Everybody seems to be intently reading, or a lot of people are, so I'll wait up a second. But again, we're not voting on anything tonight.
Question for you, Carolyn. How does this, if we look at the rules and we do the changes like this, is that something we can do, or is that something that's going to involve a lot more?
So typically, kind of procedurally, you'll have work sessions like this. If there's any request to change language, you're free to, deliberate on that amongst yourselves today. If it's something that you do want to see changed and updated, the procedure would be for staff to go back and update the rules, probably provide a red line and a clean copy at a future meeting for you to vote on. If it's something, identify different sections that you want updated, it can be done piece by piece, but just a general cleanup, which we've done with other boards recently, it's kind of why we have the work session, to get consensus on what you want those to be and then adopt them at a later date.
Commissioner Muir, do you have?
Yeah, I was gonna, my mic's on. I was gonna suggest that maybe we look at adopting the rules that the city council did when they limited the minutes that the public came to speak. I know you was, regardless, you wanted to give them their time, but I think that when people spoke a second time, it was saying some of the same things that was already said. And so their point, getting that large of a group, letting them have, maybe it's 3 minutes instead of 4 minutes, makes a little more sense to let everyone speak and get through the meeting so it's not so long. And I know that the city council did that when they had their meeting.
Now,
So-
the city council did that at the meeting, right? That's not,
No, they did it in the
their
works.
rule allows for changing the amount of time, right? Now, our rule lets us do that too, doesn't it? Okay, it's just we wouldn't want to do it after people have started. We would want to do it beforehand.
Yeah, well, they,
Okay, so I didn't know that we had the ability to do that.
yeah, I know they discussed it at the work session about for every 100 people, you take a minute off of the allowed time.
And I can understand, I mean, I'm not sure whether that works as across the board, but I can certainly understand the sense of going, it's going to be really long. We did have the challenge that we ended up with 3 different sections where people had the opportunity to speak. And that was one of the challenges that we had.
Yeah.
And we couldn't, I mean, I'm not sure that there was anybody, or not much of anybody, who spoke at all 3 sections. But technically they could, because we had the work session and the public comment for that portion of it, and then we had the public hearing on the first agenda item, and then the public hearing on the second agenda item. And so we can't, and I don't see how we could have limited them and said they could only speak on one of those.
I'm not saying limit them so they couldn't speak on one, but limit to they speak 3 minutes instead of 4.
Yes, no, and we certainly, I think our rules let them speak for 5 minutes, as a general rule. And
Yeah.
that is a very long period of time.
But during the city council meeting, it said right up front, you've got 3 minutes to speak, and then there's someone watching that time and giving notice that your time is about up. And it's
Yes.
not the chairperson, it's.
Yeah, and I don't really, I would not feel comfortable as a chair doing it that way. It's the chair's responsibility
do we need
to tell
So-
somebody they have to stop.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So do we need someone in place, sort of like Shanae does, for instance,
Yeah.
for council?
I
He's saying he wants to be the one to do
think the
it.
chair has the responsibility of telling somebody they have to stop. I mean, that's the way it is in the rules of procedure, and that is, I think that was, I mean, I understand that that's how they did it at the city council, where Shanae was stopping them, but ultimately it was the mayor's decision as to whether somebody got to keep speaking, not Shanae's, under their rules. It was his decision. Now, he decided not to do that, but that was his decision.
I believe when he started the meeting, he brought up cutting the time down. He had a motion, and the council voted on it. And then, obviously, the way it went, Shanae was the one who was keeping time, and she runs a pretty tight ship.
Yeah.
Well, she was keeping time because she was also queuing people up to come back
Right.
down, because she's the one with the list of people who've been signed up to speak. So I think that's why she does that.
Right.
I like the idea of the chairman having the control over that, because it is his meeting in the long run. And we have given developers plenty of time to speak when they have 2 cases, a development case and a zoning case, or a land use case and you combine them, and a lot of times they go over because of our questions. I would like to see us say, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, the work session, we give them 3 minutes. And I thought in the public meetings, we were giving them 5. I don't see any reason why in a work session, that's our time. I don't see any reason why it needs to be 3 minutes. If you want to register your comment, it needs to be 1 minute. I'm for it or I'm against it. They're not really adding anything other than their opinion about the case. They're not adding substantive information. We should be getting that from city staff, the developer, applicant. So I would be in favor of limiting the work session to even just 1 minute. And then limiting the public hearing to 3. I'd also like to see the chairman have the opportunity to say, and you've done it before, say, if you're all speaking on the exact same thing, raise your hand and say your yay or nay. In the particular case of PUD 6, that was an entirely different thing. People
It's a very
really wanted to
unusual
go.
situation.
Yeah, people wanted to go on record, and I think that's fair. They need to go on record if that's how strongly they feel. They should be given the opportunity to do that, but not 5 minutes, and not 5 minutes on both cases. And if they've already said what they need to say, they shouldn't. We gave them the opportunity to come back even after to provide their input based on our conversation. That, again, felt like super redundant to me. It's like a triplicate at that point, or quad if they spoke in work session. That's just too much. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the public hearing portions, I think the city council's rules have always had the default being three minutes. And that seems to me, I mean, in the vast majority of cases, plenty of time. I'm not sure why ours are 5. I think if they've always been that way, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
But it also, if you've got a new resident who's coming, not PUD 6, but if you've got a new resident who's never presented anything before, this is their first time to do it, if it's 3 minutes, that's fine. If they need more time because they're uncomfortable and they've, not clear what they're doing, give them their.
Decision that's made by him.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Give them-
or whoever
give
the
them
chair is.
Plenty of time to do that.
It won't be me forever.
Yeah.
I do like that idea, and I agree, like the 1 minute work session and then the 3 minute, and especially if there is also an additional information that's like, hey, we still have questions and can utilize extra time for the applicant. But at the point of the excessiveness of the 5 minutes and then having it becoming redundant was just.
Carolyn, you put yours on. The 1 minute gave me a little bit of pause. I was hoping you were
And
weighing
that's
on.
specifically what I wanted to speak to. So at your work session, there was a change to the Texas Open Meetings Act a few sessions ago that requires not only citizens to be allowed to speak on public hearing items, but also to any item listed on the agenda. And so that is why it is captioned the way that it is, and that's universal across all city boards and city council meetings for non-public hearing items. You have obviously different rules in place for public hearing items and how long people can speak on those, but that's why that is set at 3 minutes. That has been a universal determination. Legally, it just has to be a reasonable period of time. That has been, again, what has universally been done for all boards and commissions. So that's kind of where that 3 minutes came from. As far as during the actual public hearing portion, that absolutely is up to you as well. But
And except
hopefully
for-
that's some context for
And-
the difference between those two things.
And except for the PUD 6 meeting, I asked the question, are there any speakers for that? And April's response is almost always no. Because there isn't almost ever any people commenting on that section of the work session. That was a really unusual
I
circumstance we
didn't hear
had.
you say no to 1 minute. I heard you say that they could speak on agenda items and non-agenda items.
So there's a little, trying to make sure I understand your question. So are you saying that if there's an agenda item, that there is a vast number of people who are wanting to speak on that particular work session agenda item, you would want to limit it down? Or you're saying from, just across the board, any work session item on any meeting, on any given day? So for instance, well, this isn't the best example, but if somebody wanted to comment on your rules of procedure discussion up front, they would have had the right to do so. are you suggesting that they should have 1 minute instead of the 3 minutes that's otherwise kind of universally applied? You can think about it. This is not to put you on the spot, but
No,
I'm trying,
no,
I'm
no, I
trying to
think it's fair, I
understand
think
the
it's,
question.
no, I think it's a very fair.
My understanding is she's talking about the people coming, from what I'm gathering out of it, and I could be wrong, but she's talking about people that are coming up here and speaking at the work session, and then turn around and going back to public comment and speaking, and then turn around and going back and speaking at an agenda item. So what she was saying is limit that to 1 minute here, give them their 3 minutes there, or whatever is agreed upon, out at the public comment, correct me if I'm wrong, and then they have their time on the agenda.
And I think some of what Carolyn's pointing out, maybe why the rules of procedure is a good one, is we don't have an agenda item for this evening on it. So if people wanted to comment on it, the work session would have been the only time to make comments about it. So there won't be any time this evening at our evening session where somebody could go out there and talk about it.
About a non-agenda?
Because it was on our work session agenda, not on our evening agenda.
And
because-
that's probably where there was some confusion the evening that you did have your PUD 6 conversations. It was in fact 2 separate meetings. You had an individual work session and then you had the individual public hearing items at a separate meeting. Had those all been, the postings and the way it was done and the way that the presentations were made, it just was an unusual circumstance.
Yeah, and I talked to a number of people who were very confused about which item it is they were supposed to be speaking on. And we've had that happen sometimes, where people have signed up to speak at the work session, and then we sort of said, hey, there's still the public hearing later, and they've said, oh, wait a minute, no, I'll just wait for the public hearing. But yeah, there were definitely people confused that night as to when they were supposed to be talking.
Okay, so I still would like that, and whether it's in the rules now or making sure that it is in the rules, that if we get a situation where there's, I'd say, more than 50 people signed up to speak, that we vote on whether they're going to speak for 5 minutes or 3 minutes.
And that's what the city council.
And I'm not opposed to doing that on an ad hoc basis. I'm also
I'm
would be.
not saying that it should be ad hoc. I think it should be part of our rules that we have the ability to do that.
Well, we have the ability to do that already. But I think Debbie's suggestion was maybe for the public hearing, we just reduce it down. We just reduce it down to 3 minutes for the public hearings, just in general, per speaker.
Okay.
In order to, and that would help to alleviate some of that, even regardless of how many people we had. That wouldn't change that we could still have the ability, if we had a meeting and we concluded this is. That's weird. This is an appropriate time to reduce it even further, we could still do that. As long as we were making sure that people were getting a reasonable opportunity to be heard. That would be the main thing.
Well, Carolyn, does the Open Meetings
Oh,
Act
your speaker went off too.
does the Open Meetings Act say you have to give at least 3 minutes? Is there a minimum number of minutes?
There's not, but after, kind of a universal evaluation for all the boards. And to be clear, that, the work session, 3 minutes, is not part of your rules of procedure today. That's, again, just a universal standard that the city has put in place for all of its meetings. And so that's where that originated. It's from the Open Meetings Act and kind of just looking through different pieces of legislative history and, case law and attorney general opinions and just kind of evaluating that. That's where the city settled as far as something reasonable. Some cities have longer than that. It just, you're required to have it is what's required by law.
Question for you. We have to have an unanimous vote, though, correct?
Today,
To-
your
to
rule,
do-
today,
to
your
do
rules
anything.
say unanimous, yes,
Instead
sir.
of a majority.
Correct. Today.
That's one thing I'd like to see, because that means that every one of us would have to be in agreement. One person's not in agreement, then
To
it's
change the
done.
time.
Versus majority. If you got a majority vote, then that would be more, I'd like to see that change versus an unanimous vote.
You mean to change the time if
Yes,
if chairman says,
everybody would have to agree.
If we had 200 people
He
signed
wants
up and,
majority.
and we said, hey, we want to change it from 5 minutes to 3 minutes because we've got 200 people and we don't want to be here all night long, and we think that'll be a reasonable amount for each person to be heard adequately. Yeah, that is my understanding, is our current rules will require it to be a unanimous vote. If we were to want to change that, are we able to change our rules by a majority vote?
Let me confirm, but I believe so. I will read them and let you know.
Okay.
and how does the city council handle that too? Is that unanimous versus majority?
Oh, yeah.
Just,
Yeah, what was it on theirs? Yeah, I don't remember. It was majority vote for shortening the time?
Al's right back there.
oh, there he is.
Do you remember how,
You still have the gavel. And if you really
You have the
feel
gavel.
that you need to make a decision based upon, you got 150 people. We made ours, we took it from 3 minutes down to 2.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, we knew we had over 100, 150. I would have taken it to 1, because they're all saying the same thing.
Right.
Now, if they're gonna talk on different topics, then that's a different thing. So you still have the rule of the gavel. Okay?
No, yeah, and I mean, it's an important thing to, I mean, like you said, you feel it, you're giving everybody a chance to be reasonably heard. I mean, that certainly seems to be the key thing in terms of any limitation on the amount of time that goes into effect.
I agree
It
with
has to be
everybody
reasonable.
should be heard. I agree with you fully, and I agree with you on that. But I don't agree that it should be done to an abusive manner, per se. And speaking the same thing 4 times over and consistently just packing, that was done in an abusive manner to the commission. And some of the words and stuff like that and everything else. So I agree that everybody should be heard, but it should be done in a respectable time frame that respects everything that's being done.
Well, and I'll add, I like that the default is closer to 5 minutes than, say, something less. I don't know if 5 is too generous. That's something we could talk about. But I view part of our role, a lot of what we hear, we're the body of first instance for the public to come. I view our role as building a record so that we can make a recommendation to the city council, who's ultimately responsible for deciding. So if we're able to provide people an opportunity to speak, and that becomes part of the record the city council can consider, I think that's an important role that we're serving. A lot of folks, even if they are repeating similar themes, it's not necessarily coordinated or orchestrated. A lot of folks show up for the same reasons and want to be heard. So I think that's an important role that we serve, is we are a forum in which they can speak, how they feel about things that affect the public and their lives in the city of Irving. So I like the discretion that there is to adjust the rules when it looks like we need to. The unanimous rule, I think, might need to be revisited. That makes sense to me. But those are my views.
Yeah, but I still have a problem with somebody coming in during work session, which is our time to understand the cases, to get our questions answered, and have them speak against a case that's going to be presented in a public hearing. I understand that the state law requires they be given the opportunity, but I would still say limiting the time, because we have a responsibility to start our meetings on time too. And we didn't start the public hearing until, 9 o'clock at night, whatever time it was. 9:30? No,
Oh, no,
the work
it was
session
like
at-
8.
But
Seems like.
our public hearings should
8
start
when
at
we
7.
Do I?
And does our sign up, does the sign up sheet, when they go to sign up, is the work session sign up sheet the same as the public hearing sign up sheet? And because they have the choice of saying, I vote against a case and I don't want to talk. They're still being heard, they're still being represented, they're still going on record, they just don't get up to speak. So is our sign-in form for work session and public hearing the same, giving people the,
Oh, did I turn off? Okay. Where you can do it online. So that's what we prefer, and most people actually do it that way. And you can choose, whether you want to speak at work session at 5:30 or the meeting at 7, and then you can say whether you're, support or against, and you can put any notes. So that is just one form, and they can choose what they want to do, and then that comes through to us. And then here, staff sits out there 30 minutes before, and essentially, we create a template, a big chart, and that's where people sign in, but we do have the small little forms that they do write on. So the answer is yes, it is the same form, but they can just write what time they want to speak, and whether it's support and opposition.
Question for Carolyn. Okay, so we have all the rules and procedures in place. If we run across another issue, which there's some changes that need to be done to it, but one of the big changes that me and Daniel actually agree upon is the anonymous rule, going to majority instead of unanimous, going to majority on it. So if we do that and we're stuck in another position, do we have the ability by going to a majority rule to suspend rules and to try to accommodate the situation that we're faced with?
Not until we change the rule.
Correct. As things stand today, you would need a unanimous decision the night of whatever rule you wanted to suspend.
Okay.
If you wanted to amend the rules, then similar to what I said as far as the process, if you wanted to change the ex parte communications, you could do that at the same time as far as changing, the unanimous requirement. But that would be the process
But
to
if we
do
went
so.
to majority,
That could be done through,
then we would have that
Going
ability
forward.
to do
Going
so
forward.
going forward.
correct.
Okay, so that's one of the major changes.
And what is it we're going to need to have a majority vote in order to change the rules? Were you able to find that? Like, are
There's
we already
nothing-
stuck in a bad cycle, or can we get out of it?
There's nothing specifically in your rules that I have found.
Okay, so
that
presumptively,
Presumptively, it would be majority, yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Okay, my turn. So, so this is my suggestion, a couple of, if we're gonna change the timing, my suggestion will be if there are more than 50 people, down to 3 minutes, more than 100, 2 minutes, more than 150, down to 1 minute. We should also limit the time for the meeting to, it shouldn't be more than midnight. I don't think that passing midnight is really, I mean, at what time do we have to set a limit on that? Should we stay here until 3, 4, 5 a.m.? I mean, what should be the timing? So something, I think a time where, hey, maybe midnight should be a cutoff time where we're meeting here and everybody has to get through everything. I don't know if timing is a problem.
I think that the council's rules have a provision in there, don't they, that says that if it gets to be midnight, like, then they have the chance to decide whether to adjourn to the following day or postpone, or to make a modification, because, I mean, there is a rule in theirs that is intended to address some of that, realizing that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it gets to be 2 a.m. and all of our minds are a little fried, and
Right, yeah.
it's a little hard to, sort through everything at that point.
Caroline, is there something of a time limit for city council?
I would have to look. The Texas Open Meetings Act does allow you to adjourn and reconvene the following day under different circumstances. I don't know how that's worded in their rules, but that is an option.
But we couldn't have like an absolute time limit, like, I
No.
mean, we couldn't just say, this is when we end and tough, because, or rather, if we did that, we couldn't vote.
Correct.
Because until the public hearing is complete, we can't vote. So
Correct.
if we cut the public hearing short,
You still have to reconvene the
we
following
would
day.
have to reconvene to continue the public hearing.
Chairman, can I help you on that? Yeah. First of all, out of time, and out of set of time,
Yeah.
period. You saw what happened to us. That's where I'll speak up. Now, bottom line is that, you want to always Work sessions, we don't engage.
Hmm.
Okay? That's why you have to, you actually have your meeting at 7 o'clock, and then you can hear it. Secondly, you don't want to set midnight, because you may exclude people. And then you go into what I'm sure the legal counsel will tell you. You're not hearing from people. Now, how do you deal with that? Two ways. You go from 5 minutes to 3 minutes or 2 based upon what do you have as far as papers coming. I don't know if you remember when I held up 200, 100, 1 pro, 1 poor. Okay? Then you understand that's 200. So then you have a measurement as to, do we want to be here in 3 minutes times 200? Well, then you say, no, well, we're going to make a decision. Now, that from the council side, we went to 2. When I saw 200, I said, let's go to 1 minute, that's ridiculous. Well, we ended up saying, no, let's go ahead and keep it at the middle. And so we were there at 2:30, just like you guys were. The ruling is always going to be there within all the rules and regulations. There's the gavel. When I say the gavel, the chair. In this case with us, it's the mayor. And you notice what he did. That's how he's done it. Now, you can do 2 things as part of that. You can also say, we're recessing. And come back in 2 hours or whatever, or tomorrow. I mean, there's ways, it's all about control and demeanor of the procedures and process, period, within the legal. Okay, so I hope I made it clear at the end of the day. I'd be very careful in trying to set hard, fast, midnight, etc. I don't like it, but guess what? You raise your hand, so did I. Get over it. You're going to be here till 2 or 3, or retire.
Are we able to limit, say, a person reappearing? Is that something that we can do? Because at that point, like talking about PUD 6, it became more of a debate rather than a forum with them reappearing. Or is that something with the Open Meetings Act that they have that right? Carolyn?
I mean, they have a right to speak at a public hearing. So
And there were
however you
2 public
manage that
hearings.
public hearing, as far as the times, that's up to y'all. But the public has a right to speak at each
And then
public hearing.
returning back?
If it's a different item that you're
Then they-
voting on, so yeah.
Yeah, and the problem was we had to do 2 public hearings. I mean, that was part of the challenge, is we were required to have 2 public hearings.
You
Because
mean
we had
agenda items?
Because we had 2 agenda items, each of them was required to have its own public hearing.
Yes.
So we had,
Yes.
we had the work session, and we had people who signed up at the work session, and I think really they probably mostly wanted to speak at a public hearing. But I think it was a little bit confusing as to most of them had never spoken here before, so it wasn't like we were talking about people who come here regularly and know how our procedures work. But, so then at our first public hearing, we had the massive number of people. I mean, the work session, I think we had about 30. At our public hearing, we had like,
175.
no, not 175. We had over 100. And then we didn't have very many at the second public hearing, but at that point, it was already 2 in the morning. I mean, so, anybody speaking at that point, it was going long because it was just so late. But it was really that first public hearing that we had the largest number of speakers at. And, I mean, most of those people had already left by the time we got to the second public hearing.
It's not exactly how I remember it, but I'm going to put my Priscilla hat on. Priscilla was really good about noticing and advocating for education of our public. In this particular instance with PUD 6, we had the land use case, and then we had the zoning case. They were very distinctive cases, very different votes for each one. And if we somehow can help to educate people as to what they're voting on, are you okay with changes to PUD 6? And then you've got the different issues related to the exceptions on the zoning case. And what would be permissible uses. Those are 2 really different things. And I go back to Priscilla's idea always of how can we better educate our public as to what they're speaking on? And to your point, do they really need to speak in the work session? No, what they really wanted to do was speak in the public hearing. And then that's when we got into the duplicate, triplicate, and then feedback at the end. And we haven't really talked about feedback at the end of the, once we've gotten everybody's input, and we've had our discussion, we invited people to come back up a fourth time if they chose to. And I do believe we had some people come up to offer their remarks after the end of our discussion on the zoning case. Yeah.
Not after the second round of voting, only after the first round. So at the second public hearing, because there wasn't any opportunity to
That's not what I
speak then.
remember. But in any case, I don't really, that's not exactly how I
The
remember.
first round was around 2 a.m.
Yeah, our first vote was at 2 a.m.,
Around
so
2
it was
a.m.
after that, yeah.
It wa-
Okay.
And that's when they came and talked, and so I would like to see something, because they were not really addressing the topic, they were addressing us
Our inputs.
and asking us
That's when it became the
directly.
debate.
So it didn't become about the topic, it became about why did you vote like this, why did you do this, so it was about questioning us, not on the topic.
Well, we're over now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, obviously, there's further discussion on this. It did sound like there would be interest in maybe a revision of the rule as to the unanimous requirement for making those on the meeting modifications. And it sounded like we still need to have more discussion on what kind of time limits if we want to make modifications to that. But obviously, that would be a easier edit if we get to doing that.
So do we need to do everything at once?
And then-
Or do we do it piecemeal? Because you said you weren't for sure on the majority and.
You don't have to do it all at once. Certainly, if we amend anything, I would advise that we re-adopt. But if there are the specific changes you want to make, if you want to make the changes to the ex parte provisions that were provided, if you want to change the unanimous requirement, staff can prepare those changes for you to vote on, if there's a consensus direction to do so. So we would just need an indication of that.
My impression is that probably on those two, there's a consensus. I mean, that was on those ones, and it sounded like on some of the other things, we probably need some more time to visit about them and reflect on them. But I think everybody wants to make sure we give adequate time for the public to be heard. It's just a matter of how to best do that to really allow the process to work properly.
Is that something you'd like to see at your next work session?
Unless our next work session and meeting look like they're going to be really long already.
They'll get that drafted and brought forward.
Great.
And one more question. If we do the changes now, do we need to put the revision in on it where we can suspend? Or is the majority versus a unanimous vote rule that out?
Oh, my understanding was that the change, and so let's all be on the same page. So
Okay.
your rule regarding suspension of rules, which in this case would mean you could shorten the time limit, currently says that suspension has to be done by unanimous vote.
So
Are
when
you
we do the
asking
majority
that
change-
be reduced to be simply a majority vote can suspend the rules?
Yes.
Yeah.
That,
Are we in a
Yeah.
consensus on
I
that?
think that's what, yeah,
okay.
Okay.
yeah. And then the other one is the ex parte, so just those two for now.
And is
Okay,
everyone
hold on a
okay
second.
with the language that Commissioner Denny presented?
Okay. Future agenda items, anybody with any future agenda items?
Actually, I do. I'd like very much for us to include a legislative update. We're at the end of the legislative session, and I was just hearing and learning about something that was very likely moving forward on apartments, where if we have a
Commercial property.
Thank you. Commercial property that has a developer can come in and put apartments on. They have to meet certain restrictions, but they can do it without any zoning. I feel like this body needs to know those things, and that we should have an opportunity to say to our legislative representative that's going down. Is that John Weiss?
John Weiss is our,
Weiss. Yeah, so we have the opportunity to talk to John Weiss and tell him how we feel. Or he can come in and explain all those things, but we should have an opportunity to know what's happening for that. And then I also think we really, really, really need to look at data centers again. I know we've talked about it a lot, but the more I read about data centers, the more demand on the power grid, the more concerned I am about those cases coming to us. And I don't know how General Zapana feels, but I feel like we need to tighten that up as.
Quiet, you guys keep pulling me.
Yeah, I really feel like that needs to be even tighter than what we have already. I probably will vote against every data center that comes in front of me
Can I
now.
make a suggestion? Justin, you know, TML, Texas Municipal, I know we got the legislative review. I think it's, end of this month. They can also, you can also have it come in on the web and take a look at it. I mean, so they really do a good job, and I'm actually go to those once a year, well, once every 2 years. Because then you get who's doing what to who. And the other part of it is you'll understand why they did it and who did it. And you're gonna see one last thing. We are under assault from the Texas legislature to take our abilities, that means you and this P and Z operation, as well as us and the council. And there's a couple fellows here on this that know what I'm talking about. So that may be something you can help, because they do a good job and it might help out. Okay?
yeah, I spent most of this morning
Chairman, I thought you didn't say it here.
digesting because everything, I mean, it was, through probably late hours last night. So this morning I was like, okay, what did we end up with? What actually died? And we liked a lot of the stuff that died. But yeah, the 840, Seal Heroes refer to 840 a lot. But there's 20 or so in there that affect us. A lot of things affect, like food trucks and being able to regulate a lot of things that, we are used to regulating, and now they took those away. So yes, we are starting to summarize all that and kind of wrap our brains around what we may need to amend, how it's going to affect us. And it could have been worse, but it's definitely not ideal for sure.
And I don't think that we have the time, I mean, it's kind of the cart after the horse now, horse
Cart
before,
before the
however it
horse.
goes. I mean, it's kind of a moot at this point because our legislative agenda is closed now, or over, the session's over. But if he extends the session, as he's done, the governor, as he's done other times in the past, 2 years ago, they kept extending until like September. So there's a chance that some of this still may come back. Maybe, I don't know, John would,
And it would be
you all
useful
know
for us
far
to
better
have
than
a sense of what's happened.
I do. I do
Jocelyn,
think so.
I know we have to end, but was there anything on ADUs? I think people were hoping to see something on that.
That's actually one of the few that didn't make it through. So, yeah, that died in the House, if I'm correct.
All right. Work session is adjourned at 7:08 PM. We will meet over there shortly.